Chelsea from the podcast of Orange Coast Magazine. I'm Chelsea Ranieri, and today's guest is someone who truly embodies the pulse of Southern California media. He's the president and publisher of Engine Vision Media, which includes Los Angeles Magazine, Pasadena Magazine, and of course, Orange Coast. He spent more than 2 decades shaping the publishing world and has interviewed everyone from Ryan Seacrest to Nicole Kidman. Thank you so much for being here today, Chris Gialanella.
Hello, Chelsea. Thanks for having me, and congrats on everything you're doing with the Zest. We absolutely love it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, we've been working together for like 2 years now, and you gave me this incredible opportunity. So I am so appreciative. I'm excited to learn about your career.
Well, I'm honored that I'm a guest, so that's great. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Sure.
Well, well, to start at the very beginning of your story, you grew up in Livingston, New Jersey, which I didn't know. So what were you like as a kid?
I am a Jersey boy, and I loved being a kid. I actually wish I was a kid again, but I grew up in an Italian Catholic household. I have a great family. My parents are still alive. I'm actually going to go see them next week.
Wow.
I have 2 older brothers. So obviously our whole world was sports, church, food, and food, and food, and food, right? So that's kind of how my childhood kind of was. But we all got along. We all were, that's kind of how my world started back in New Jersey.
I can totally picture it. Sounds like a movie. And I'm assuming this is where your love for meatballs came.
Yeah, I love meatballs. But hey, I delivered pizza. I worked at Baskin Robbins. I did it all. So it was a great place to grow up. And that's the story.
Well, speaking of jobs that you had when you were growing up, at just 12 years old, you were working at Silverman's Hallmark store, putting together newspapers, which how fortuitous. So
yeah,
back then that print media might be part of your life?
Well, I always loved reading newspapers, and my job was really to put together the newspapers on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday was a little slimmer, but Sunday was like the big gusto of a newspaper between the comic books, Parade magazine, all the coupons. And at the end of the day, Chelsea, my hands were literally black from all the ink. And then I had to bring them up to the front of the store, but it was great. It was a really great job to have. At the time, I think I made like $2.50 an hour, but for a 12-year-old, hey, that was great,
Yeah, that's such a cool job for a 12-year-old too. It sounds like really awesome getting to read different media things when you're growing up like that.
Absolutely.
Well, you spoke about, sorry, what?
I was going to say, I think it was like 1982 was when I worked at Silverman. So that's how old I am, Chelsea. Yeah.
So is that like the height of print media, kind of?
I mean, it was the height of my life. I mean, I think the 80s was a great time for everybody. The music was fun. I think MTV just came out at the time. We'd ride our bikes all summer long. The fire whistle would blow at 6:00, and then it was time to go home. But our parents didn't know where we were, but we were all having a good time, and that's what was important about being a kid in New Jersey.
It sounds like a quintessential childhood.
Yes.
Well, you've spoken about overcoming a stuttering problem as a child. So how did that experience shape your confidence and communication skills over time?
It's funny because growing up, I did have a little bit of a stutter, and I just kind of overcame it on my own, but I also was a sports guy, but I was also in the marching band, if you could believe that. So I got a lot of abuse from people. I've been called really cool some days and then a total nerd the next days. But I didn't even care because I really had a passion for playing the clarinet and I really enjoyed it. So I think I overcame a lot of those fears back then because I simply just said, you know what? I enjoy doing this. So too bad, and that's kind of what got me on the realm of being sort of independent, not really caring what other people thought.
Wait, the clarinet. So I played the clarinet for a summer in middle school.
No way. You did?
Yeah, I did not fall in love with it because it was so challenging. So good for you that you were able to master that.
Well, it's funny, Chelsea, because when I proposed to my wife, I actually brought my clarinet back to California. This is 2000 or 1999. And I relearned how to play a song from Phantom of the Opera, All I Ask of You, on the clarinet. So then when my fiance came home, I had, flowers, and then I was in the bedroom with my clarinet playing the song for the proposal. So it was very meaningful for me to kind of bring it back into my world, years later.
What? That's so sweet.
Yeah. See, I have a sweet side too, right?
Yeah. So can you still play today?
I could, it's in my storage unit, but you know what? Maybe I'll take it out for the holidays, and you and I could do some holiday tunes together
That would be so cool.
at the company Christmas party, Chelsea. Let's do it.
All I can really play at this point is probably like a kazoo, but I would definitely give it a try, see if that one summer can come back for me.
Yeah.
But then you studied political science at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then you even interned for a congressman after you graduated. So what originally drew you to politics?
Well, really funny story. Talking about food in New Jersey, I was at my grandmother's house one Memorial Day, and we were all eating, and there was a parade that went by, and our local congressman, Dean Gallo, his name was in the parade. And, my grandmother ran out and said to him, "My son's graduating from college. He needs an internship." And I think Dean Gallo was so impressed that my grandmother would do such a thing that he actually called her, got my information, and then wound up working for him that summer after I graduated from college. It's kind of my first taste in political. I was always a political science guy, but working on the Hill, in DC back in 1992 was a really great place to be. So that's how the whole thing started.
Story. And I just pictured this Italian grandmother.
Oh, yes.
So cute. So your son's kind of followed in your footsteps, and he took an interest in politics and started a nonprofit called GovLearn, which I read about this and I'm blown away. It's so impressive, and he's so young. So can you talk about what that charity does?
It's interesting because when Luke was 9, he was always fascinated with politics and how everything worked. And he always wanted to communicate with people about it, his contemporaries, but nobody knew what he was talking about, right? So he decided to start a charity called GovLearn to teach young kids about how the political system works. So it was nonpartisan, but it literally taught people, how does the judicial branch work? What does the president do? What's the role of a senator? And really, he would host Zoom calls, and he also taught classes at some homeschool programs at the time. And then he built it up. And he was on, Fox 11 with Alex Michelson. CBS did a national story on Luke as being a young kid involved in politics. And to this day, he's, an international relations major and still very much involved in the political system.
I can't believe he started all that at 9. I need him to.
It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah. Did you
sorry
in him?
I was going to say sorry about the cough. I have a little bit of a cold, but we're getting better here, so all good.
I thank you for doing this while you're having a cold. But did you instill that in him, or how did he become?
I guess so. I mean, I always was fascinated by politics myself, and he always took a liking to Barnes and Noble when he was a kid. He'd pick up an encyclopedia, pick up all the history books, then all the political books. So he really was engaged in history, and really it just led to politics. But then he also knew how the political system worked in foreign countries like Germany and Austria. So it wasn't just United States; it was all over the world. He really just got really fascinated by it.
Wow! So you and your wife birthed a genius. That's crazy. I can't even imagine.
He's a good kid. He really is.
Yeah.
We got lucky there, in that space.
That's amazing. Well, to get back to your story, you made a pretty big pivot from Capitol Hill to working in media distribution in New York at a company called PIMS. So what motivated that change?
So my parents decided I had to get a real job in DC after my internship, and I had a really hard time. And they said, "We're not paying your rent anymore." I was waiting tables. And finally, my parents said, "You got to come back or we're not supporting you anymore." So my mom sent out a bunch of resumes for me. This is probably 1993. And one company called me. The name of the company was called PIMS. And they worked with a lot of public relations companies and, studios, mailing out press releases and, content to get to journalists. So back then, Chelsea, before your time, you would actually send a negative photo with a press release printed, mailed out so that you would receive it and then you'd write about it. This is before the days of email. So I worked there for many years, and then I had an opportunity to either move to Chicago or Los Angeles. And I decided, hey, I'm just going to go all in and move to the City of Stars. So that's what brought me out to the West Coast was my times at PIMS.
That's so cool. I love that like this came full circle that you were working with newspapers as a kid and then media again as
Yeah, it was great.
yeah,
It was
first job.
great.
Well, there's a great story about your wife bringing home a copy of Angelino and encouraging you to reach out to the publisher. So, can you tell us what that moment meant for you and how you convinced them to give you a shot?
My wife always thought I was very personable. And, instead of sitting in an office all day, there's a lot more I could do. So, Angelino magazine had just been launched, and I think it was the September of 1999 issue, and they just celebrated 25 years. Claire Forlani was on the cover. I remember my wife came home and said, "Hey, you should call this gentleman whose face is in there, who's the publisher, Michael Kong, and get into sales." So I said, interesting. So I called Michael Kong and I said, "Hey, my fiance thinks that I'd be great at sales, and I understand salespeople get paid commission. So you kind of have nothing to lose by bringing me on board." So Michael said, "All right, well, come on in." So I met with him, and literally like that day, he's like, "Can you start right now?" So I immediately started my career in the magazine world, just literally because of my wife, and
Yeah.
I learned, obviously, I still do it today, but honestly, it's all about relationships. And I learned that early on in the magazine world, like going into stores, meeting people face to face, and just creating, a relationship. And I always felt like in the magazine world, if you're not out there yourself going to these businesses, how do you expect your readers to go in there? So that's kind of the approach I took back in 2000 when I started at Modern Luxury.
Wow. And I just want to point out, I love that you have so many strong women that surround you and like help. And I love that you credit them for guiding you into these different directions.
Yes.
Incredible.
I don't know where I'd be without these powerful, strong women, for sure.
Well, you mentioned Modern Luxury. So you spent over 2 decades there and you eventually became the group publisher. So what are you most proud of from that time?
I think it was so fun at the time because we also created really unique opportunities for a lot of our advertisers. And we really learned that experiential was a really important part of our business. It started off where it was all about print, magazines. But as I learned from being there, we learned that there's a lot more that you could do. And I think at Modern Luxury, it was great because we would do a lot of these like big celebrity covers with celebrities hosting events and getting sponsors. So, we did a lot of those really interesting events at the time that really generated a lot of great revenue for the brands. Plus, it was fun that they were all over the country. We had Hamptons, we had Philadelphia, we had Ocean Drive, which is sort of the Bible of a lot of luxury publications at the time. So they were in 24 markets across the country.
That's wild. And I've seen those. I mean, the magazines look great, and there's always usually like a celebrity on the cover. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Most of the time, it's very sort of fashion forward, celebrity, all luxury.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, in 2023, you took on a huge role as president and publisher at Engine Vision Media, overseeing Los Angeles Magazine, Orange Coast, and Pasadena Magazine. So, how did this role come to be?
So, it's interesting because there was new ownership at Los Angeles Magazine, and I had gotten a call from one of the principal owners saying, "I hear your name and, we want to meet you." And we heard like your name keeps coming up with a lot of different people. So I met with them. And honestly, I felt like, this is like my third job out of college. And I just felt like Los Angeles Magazine is so iconic and Orange Coast are so iconic of years and years and years. I mean, Orange Coast is 50 years or 51 years. LA Magazine is 65. So there's just such history of these sort of amazing publications that I wanted to kind of say, hey, I want to try something new. I mean, I loved what I did at Modern Luxury, but it was also fun to work for a publication that does a lot more than just luxury. It's news content, it's crime, it's politics, it's sports, it's everything to do with obviously the city of LA. And then in Orange Coast, there's a lot of really interesting things we do there with like doctors and lawyers and really cool things that are going on in Newport and Laguna. And then we have Pasadena too, which is sort of, its own community within itself. And Pasadena, there's so much going on there too. And it's just like a booming sort of suburb of LA. So it just made sense for me to kind of take some things I learned from Modern Luxury, bring them over to LA Magazine and do it with a different twist. But there's also such great people that we work with like Samantha Greenfield, who is our luxury director. And I knew Sam for, 26 years. We would compete with each other on business, So it's great to like reconnect with her and work with people like Carly Allen and, Tina Borgata, who, we have such a strong, relationship from years and years at Modern Luxury, and Jasmine Rosenberg as well. So, and you, Chelsea, like meeting great new people who are creative and come up with really great concepts, like you coming up with the zest and doing another way to connect with the community. And I think that's what it really is all about.
Oh, thank you. I mean, we really are so lucky. We have such a great team. Like, I feel so like privileged and honored that I get to work with you, and it's been so much fun.
Oh, I'm going to get my violin out. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. So you're leading across print, digital, social events, video, and a podcast, as you mentioned. So how do you balance innovation with honoring a magazine's core identity? And you have 3 different identities that you're working with.
It's interesting because we are print, digital, experiential, podcast. Social media is a big part of it. I'll give you kind of an example of how we kind of bring everything together. So when I came to LA Mag, we launched the Beauty Awards, right? So it was an opportunity to bring different brands together, right, for an event on a print side where we had all the awards showcased in print. Then we had, a digital side where we did digital stories on some of the brands and promoted them digitally on our website and through social media with ambassadors and influencers promoting the product, and it was a good way to connect the community together by also finding something that was really useful and meaningful to a lot of people in Southern California with what's the best thing in beauty? What are the new treatments that are being had? What does this doctor have to say? Because I think everyone really cares about what they look like and how they feel. So to bring something together like that, I think was kind of a remarkable way of bringing together everything we are as far as, a magazine group.
Definitely. I went last year to the event, and it's such a fun and like amazing event. I saw more celebrities than I had in like a long time.
Yeah,
was there, the cover star. So just so cool just to get to be like,
she's great, Julianne. Wow. And then this year we had Molly Sims, who's like an icon model, and she's got such a great, meaningful story. And also, like, in Los Angeles, we've obviously been through a lot this year between the fires and the protests. So Molly was obviously affected by the Palisades fire. So it's kind of nice, like 9 months later, to kind of reflect on where we are now as a group, and that we kind of come together, and that was a really important meaning, I think, for everybody. And even Orange County like stepped up, and, the Newport Beach, fire department was up in the Palisades on the front lines helping out. So it was really nice to see everybody just coming together at that time.
I like that you tied that perspective into that event. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, you've done red carpet interviews, and every time I'm blown away by the people. I'm like, what? You interviewed like Kris Jenner, Ally and AJ. I mentioned Nicole Kidman. It's just like the coolest, biggest celebrities ever. So are there any standout moments where you're just like, I'm here?
It's kind of interesting because obviously in LA, it's such an important part of some of these events. And I don't know how I got involved in doing this, but people seem to really enjoy the interviews and think it's kind of fun. They take a very natural human approach to it. I'm not like, I didn't train to do this, but I actually have a lot of fun. So I like asking celebrities like really cool, funny, interesting questions like, what flavor of ice cream do you get at Baskin Robbins, right? Or something kind of silly and fun, but it's kind of unique and you kind of stand out a little bit. And obviously in LA, it's like, what do you love to do in LA? Or what's your LA story? What got you here? So those are the things that I think are kind of more meaningful than what are you wearing or blah, blah, blah. I think we take a different approach. So I remember meeting Nicole Kidman at the time. And I mean, she is so beautiful, but she's so tall. I mean, she's literally like, I felt like a little pipsqueak next to her, but she was so much fun. And I remember I told her, I said, remember seeing you in a movie called Dead Calm. And it was like one of your first movies. She goes, that was not my first movie. So it's kind of fun to like also ask a celebrity about like something they did way in the past that like not many people would know about, and ask them about that experience, So that's kind of a fun way to do it. And obviously Kris Jenner she's a riot. We had her as our, Woman of the Year she's great. And then also new fun people like, AJ and what was it? I forgot her other name. Allie and AJ. So fun, like new people who are doing really cool things. I enjoyed talking to them. And obviously one of the most meaningful one, I think, was interviewing Dr. Jane. Oh God, now I can't remember her name because I feel like I'm on the spot. She just passed away.
Oh, Jane Goodall.
Jane Goodall. How do I forget her? It was one of the most meaningful interviews of someone who has done so much for the environment and for the youth generation and for our planet. She was just a really dynamic person to meet. So I really enjoyed talking to her.
I didn't know you interviewed her. I remember when I was a kid, I did like a full book report on her and we did like this like museum.
The chimpanzees.
Yes, that's so cool that you got to interview her.
And she had her little chimpanzee with her. And it was funny. Chris Martin wrote a song for her. He actually performed at the event. And it was really cute to see her go up there, and he gave her the biggest hug. And she showed him how the chimpanzees hug you. And it was really interesting how human the chimpanzees really are, Yeah,
what an incredible experience. Well, I've also been so excited to get to ask you this question. So you went through an incredible body transformation with Stark Health. Charity. What made you take on this challenge? Because if you can talk about like a little bit about what the challenge is as well, because it's wild.
Thank you. As we spoke earlier about health, and it's such an important part of who you are. And I always felt like if you don't feel good on the outside, how are you ever going to feel good on the inside? Mm-hmm. So what happened was when I was 40, in my publisher's column, I wrote that I was turning 40. I wanted to get in the best shape of my life. And this company called Stark read the piece and they said, hey, we'd love for you to come in and talk to you about your fitness goals. And I said, all right, I'll come in. So I met the owner, Todd Vandehei. He's one of my dear friends today. And he really taught me how to really take care of yourself, where I would think just going to the gym was enough, right?
Yeah.
But it really is about nutrition, what you're putting in your body, and really taking care of yourself. Obviously, I have a cold right now, so I'm probably like the anti-health guy right now. But anyway, without the cold, I really want to make sure that like I'm always doing everything I can with the right supplements, the right vitamins, the right amount of cardio, because I think a lot of times people really don't know what to do, right? You walk through the gym and you're like, okay, I'll do a couple sets here, a couple sets there, but you feel kind of lost. So it's nice to have a program like that can really get you on track. And I also started a program called Stark Naked, where I'm not naked, but it's a competition to really showcase your hard work of 6 months. And then basically you pick a charity that you give money back to. So you're raising money for different charities. And it's sort of a popularity contest where they do a photo shoot and then they show your photos and people vote. So it's kind of a nice way to keep you motivated as well. Yeah. So I've done Stark Naked like I think 3 or 4 times right now. So, But as my wife said, I think you're done, right?
Yeah.
So, but I had a good time. I just turned 55, so it was a fun thing to do at 55.
Yeah. Wait, 6 months. I could barely get through Whole30, which is 30 days. So you were not eating you're not eating sugar.
I mean, I had moments. I'm not going to, I think maybe the first year I did everything they said, but I pretty much did mostly everything right. Maybe like 5% of the time I might have, a piece of cake or a bowl of ice cream, or because you also have to you have to have balance. You can't live your life by just eating all healthy. You need those little treats to kind of keep you going, So I kind of mixed a little bit in there. Sorry, Todd, if you're watching this, but I cheated a little bit, But that's how it works. Yeah.
And it was like mostly protein, vegetables and fruits.
Yeah, protein, vegetables, and the right amount of carbs, like brown rice or avocado or sweet potatoes. So eating things that are obviously carb related, but not like a bag of potato chips. You know what I mean? It was something, a healthy carb is how it works. So, and I did something called intermittent fasting where my first meal is at noon. And really to this day, I don't really like eating in the morning. I feel like I have I have my iced coffee and then that kind of fulfills me. And then at noon, I'll have my first meal. So it was always noon, 3, 6. Noon, 3, 6 were my meals. And that's kind of how it worked out.
Interesting. Well, what did that whole journey like teach you mentally?
It really taught me perseverance. It taught me strength. And really, it taught me to also be a leader in that because I had so many friends and clients that were like, wow, like you look great. Like, where do I go? How do I do this? So I also helped out a lot of my friends. I actually train one of my college friends now on the weekends. He comes over and I do a whole fitness thing with him. So it's kind of nice to be the guy that could do that, offer
Yeah.
my knowledge to somebody else. Obviously, if they can't afford Stark, you get me to kind of help out, with what I know.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
kind
so
of
nice
fun.
that you did that though.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you would like to shout out for listeners to keep an eye out for with Orange Coast or any of the sister publications?
Well, we have some really fun things happening, and I'll talk about LA first. LA, we have our Men of Merit event coming up in November. And then we have our big food event at Calamigos Ranch on November 16th, which is going to be everything food and everything we love about Southern California. So there'll probably be about 800 people at that event. Chelsea, I hope you guys can make it up. It's on a Sunday. And then down in Pasadena, we have our Best of Pasadena event on December 11th. Orange County, we have our big Top Docs event coming up in January, and smaller, intimate things in Orange County. But that's really what we have on the event horizon for us. But again, we're continuing to keep the brands alive, connecting each other in the community, and creating great content like you're doing, Chelsea. So it's important to find really cool, fun things to write about, because then it makes our lives a lot easier when it comes to selling advertising and sponsorships and things like that.
Yeah, totally. Well, we're coming to the end of our time, but before
we are, I don't want this to end.
I know.
This is fun. Maybe I should reverse this and ask you a lot of questions at some point. So maybe I'll interview you for the Zest next time.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, I have 3 final questions for you that we call the Thoughtful 3. So first, how do you define success now versus how you did when you were first starting out?
I think I define success as being content and happy, right? I think back then I defined success as I got to make a lot of money, and I think there's more to life than just making a lot of money. I think you just have to be happy with what you do and have a career that you don't feel like you're like waking up and going to work. It's part of who you are. So I think that kind of defines success.
That's a really good, I like that definition. And then what do you say, and I'm very curious, I get this a lot, to people who say that print is a dying medium?
Not at all. I also feel like what's old is new, right? And like, whoever thought records would come back, like LPs and EPs, right? People love those, right? So I always feel like there's always a need for something that you could actually touch and feel. And honestly, I think everyone is so overwhelmed on their phones all the time where, you don't want any distractions. And I think print allows you to really focus, right? It allows you not interrupted by a text message, not interrupted by a phone call, well, maybe a phone call, but it's not right in front of you, right? So I think it's important to have a vehicle that really just takes your mind off of like everything else that's happening in your life. So I think print is so important. And obviously we do such beautiful publications that people keep them on their coffee table. I mean, I walk into so many homes and I see our magazines like just there, I think people really appreciate the point of view from a professional, rather than, a review on Yelp or, a social media post sometimes by an influencer. Nothing against influencers, but sometimes it's nice to just like read a story by a great journalist, or hear about the new art gallery that's opening up or the great record shop and things like that. So I think there's always going to be a need for print, and I'm always a fan of print, always.
I totally agree. Well, lastly, what characteristics do you feel helped you succeed in your career?
I think being open-minded to so many different types of people. I think that's an important characteristic to always have, where you're able to communicate with anybody and find, a common goal with whoever you're speaking to. So I learned that, early on, where, connecting with people and creating those relationships like I did back in those days of walking down, Beverly Boulevard into stores and meeting store managers and hotel GMs and all those people that I still know today, so that's definitely one of the most important important things, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, thank you so much for doing this. This was so much fun.
Was I your like fun guest, Chelsea?
That's
You don't have to
so
tell
much
me.
fun. That was such a
I always have a good time with you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. And we'll hopefully get to do similar again soon.
Well, we're going to turn the tables because I'm going to interview you. Let's do a holiday zest, and I'm going to interview you for it. We'll have fun.
I would love that.
Yes.
Awesome.
Count it done. We're going to do it. Chelsea, thank you so much and keep up the great work.
Thank you.